All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our online lecture. I believe this is the third online lecture that uh, is part of our unit PG428, Foreign Policy in PNG. So this week is week number 5, and we're on topic 3, which is foreign policy at independence. And once again, we are joined by Mr. Ako from Port Moresby, who will take us through his PowerPoint slides, and we will have questions and answers after his presentation. So we'll give him this time now to go into his presentation and share with us what he has to share. So thank you everyone for joining, and we now hand over the virtual microphone to Mr. Ako. Mr. Ako, please go ahead.
Okay, so as we can see, our conversation today will be on foreign policy at independence, and I'll get straight into it. So I will share the genesis of the foreign policy drive later on in the week, but as on the screen in my presentation on the screen there, we will attempt to assess the situation and circumstances leading up to 16 September 1975, and why and or how our fathers, in their attempts to ensure that the newly independent state of Papua New Guinea started off on the correct footing, opted to be friends to all, enemies to none. Okay, so just do a bit of background and then we'll bring it up to the men. So what is a foreign policy? We will answer that. There are many important definitions for foreign policy which experts in the business have coined and are now used throughout the world in international relations. All are correct under their respective perspectives and context or the circumstances they were born under. I have decided to choose the definition provided at lumenlearning.com, as it also provides a clear understanding on bilateral and multilateral aspects of foreign policy, which I have had the humble pleasure of participating in, particularly in the last 12 years of my career in the public service. In recent times, due to the deepening level of globalization and transnational activities, non-state actors have come into play. Smart countries use this to maximize benefits of multilateral international cooperation. And by I use the word smart as in the SMART configuration for strategic conversation. So in this instance, because smart is used in this instance because advancing one's national interest must be based on a collective understanding of one or more objective endorsed by the country's highest authority to be pursued. Okay. So game plan. We did talk about game plan. Excuse me. I have simplified this definition because I view the term foreign policy as a mere fancy word for a game plan. And it is not a one-size-fits-all game plan, no. which is why bigger global economies such as the US have foreign policies on world issues. For example, the US foreign policy in Europe uh, uh, was driven through NATO or is driven through NATO, or the US foreign policy on COVID-19 will be targeting areas where it sees the greatest risk and engaging through multilateral approaches. This source, you can get it from Tillerson, which I got from 14 June 2020. Tillerson, 14 June 2020. So if these are the definition by major economists, then this implies a multifaceted approach to the country's overall game plan on how you may want to play in the global arena, be it bilaterally, which will mean knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the other country, or multilaterally, where you have to engage with more than 3 economies at the same time, within the same rules, while bringing in your own domestic resources into the fray. So this is where smart economies synergize all opportunities to advance their national interests further. So when you look at the game plan, imagine you are the PNG Rugby League chairman planning Papua New Guinea's participation at the next World Cup. You have been planning since the last World Cup, which was 5 years ago. So what would be your strategies to advance Papua New Guinea's interest at this tournament? Now, this is a multilateral engagement now because it's a tournament which has more than 2 or 3 teams in a pool. So you put in PNG on the world map of rugby league. How? By winning the pool matches? How? Or by promoting local players for overseas contracts? How? So this is all the processes. So once you have answered all these questions, you are now in a good position to plan your participation in this tournament or in a global license, play in the international arena, bilaterally or multilaterally. Note that the first step, you will require commissioning or a formal approval to go and play, which is for a foreign policy is the parliamentary process. Then the planning commences, and this planning will include, among others, your organizational structure, including governance and management structures, training, generalized or tailored to meet the challenges posed by opponents, either collectively or individually. Planning and resources required, and the resources that will be required. And finally, selecting a suitably qualified team made up of leaders and players, etc., to implement this game plan. For instance, is your foreign service suitably equipped to advance your game plan internationally? Does it have the right manpower, or does it have a manpower where 70 to 80% of them are just nearing their retirement age? How do you manage that? So with this scenario now playing around your minds, let's go back to 1975 and PNG's Friends to All, Enemy to None game plan. So why Friends to All, Enemy to None at independence? PNG at birth became an unknown player whose foreign policy evolved as a direct result of Asia's rapid industrialization after the end of World War II. This industrialization created new and powerful interactions between East Asia and North America, which in turn demanded the creation of a new framework for a relationship, first between the US and Japan, and gradually between the US and the whole region, prominently now China. The debate about what form and functions this new relationship should assume was painstaking because the effect of growing regional economic interdependence on the East Asia political climate was still uncertain. According to Drysdale 2009, 3 factors conspired to shape the formation of this new relationship. And I call this relationship because this relationship eventually became APEC. You see? The first factor was the Asia-Pacific's political, cultural, and institutional diversity. This led in conjunction with the burden of imperial history, including Japan's World War II occupation and aggression in East Asia, and to a certain level of caution among developing nations who still remember the Pacific War and their colonial history, which limited broad and deep interactions among governments and community leaders. Secondly, the Asia-Pacific region included economies at many stages of development, many of whom were newly committed to the process of reform and integration into the international community. Most remain cautious as to what such or any arrangement for that matter entailed for them. And thirdly, and perhaps most saliently, the US, a global power with global engagement, was initially not interested in this idea of regional economic integration. This meant that regional goals and policy priorities had to be patiently synergized with a great deal of innovative thinking to engineer a new form of regionalism which would fit into the circumstances of the Asia Pacific. So we are looking at the background that led to our 1975 universalism. In the Asia Pacific region, reconstructions and reparations commenced immediately after the Second World War at various paces. So by 1960s, most of the East Asian countries were by now governing themselves, and in the process securing their borders, both politically and economically, while looking beyond them to promote trade and open regionalism for the overall prosperity of their people. The formation of ASEAN in 1967, spearheaded by Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand, was a result of this. And in the course of this formation, it demonstrated that a voluntary association of diverse nations was possible. So you are now most probably wondering where I'm going with this. Now, that's understandable because this was the scenario that nudged our fathers into coming up with our first national game plan. So in the lead up to independence in 1975, while this undercurrent of open regionalism was being played out by and among the countries who were willing to or already participating in the international system as sovereign players, PNG during this period, right up to 16 September 1975, was still restricted to living under the yoke of Australia's colonialism. At the end of the war, the colonial administration had moved in quickly to reestablish itself and started extending into more remote areas. Pre-war copra, cocoa, and rubber plantations were at least partly rehabilitated, and new plantations, largely in the hands of individual Australian settlers, were established. Settler plantations on leased land were seen, in part, as a means of stimulating Papua New Guinean smallholder cash cropping. So by the mid-1960s, smallholder production of coffee exceeded plantation output. Government expenditure on education, health, and physical infrastructure were markedly expanded, while cooperatives and local government councils were established, and early steps were taken to identify and assist entrepreneurs. Papua New Guinea's economy, or what was the making of it, was still inward-looking and to the outside eye non-existent. So game plan, independence. These collective advancements in support of the winds of open regionalism in the Asia-Pacific region were not felt in one corner of the region, in a territory administered by the Australian government. So after World War II, the territory of Papua New Guinea was established under the Papua and New Guinea Act 1949. The Act formally approved the placing of New Guinea under the International Trusteeship System and confirmed the administrative union of New Guinea and Papua under that title. So when the UN's first mission visited in 1950 to review Australia's performance of its mandate in New Guinea, it called for increased participation by Papua New Guineans in the economy and politics. So shortly after this, a team from the ANU recommended the development of smallholder agriculture, the establishment of a good road system, and fiscal reforms. However, there continued a lack of forward planning for economic prosperity of this territory, as discovered by another UN mission in 1962. So 12 years later, another UN mission arrived. Now, partly in response to this criticism, the Australian government invited the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development, IBRD. I think the IBRD was a forerunner of the World Bank, to carry out an economy survey of its territory. Now, this was done in 1964, and the subsequent report, IBRD 1965, became a major focus for debate about the territory's economic future. So in a sense, the report supported a development structure based on maximizing the growth of areas of greatest export of agricultural potential through the provision of infrastructure, credit and expansion, and the encouragement of foreign private capital, which largely reflected Australian standards to be geared to local conditions. Little was said about mining or the possibility of industrialization. This was despite the fact that the construction of what was to be one of the world's largest gold and copper mines, the Panguna mine in the 1960s, was already in motion. And it promised to give this territory a degree of economic security substantially greater than was implicit in independence. Greater than was implicit in its dependence on agriculture export. Sadly, the industrialization was not an option, it would seem. Now, was it the right game plan under the circumstances? I have this picture there because this is myself in front. You have current Deputy Secretary of Prime Minister's Department, Mr. Frank Kaisi, behind me from left. And then Mr. Maori, who's now a private citizen. He was former DepSec policy at PMNS. And Mr. John Emilio, who's currently the what they call the Charge d'Affaires, I think, at our embassy in Brussels. I have this picture in place under the title, was it the right game plan? Because it was during this particular engagement in Kazan, Russia in 2012, I think, that the idea that they put into plan the idea to host APEC. You see, these two Prime Minister's Department people in the middle came to that meeting to convince me to move across to the Department of Prime Minister and NEC to head the soon to be established PNG APEC Secretariat. So this was where the game plan was discussed, and both of them were pitching that idea of hosting APEC and to me. And Mr. Emilio on the other side was the PNG APEC technical expert during that time. So I did learn a lot of my trade from him before we went on to. So that's the reason why I have this picture on board, because this is where another big game plan was being planned. So was it the right game plan under the circumstances? We are referring to the foreign policy on friends to enemy to none. Well, while the economies of the Asia Pacific plotted open regionalism and trade throughout the 1960s and into the 1970s, our fathers concentrated all efforts on betting of the new nation. The Faber report predominantly recommended the increased indigenization of many forms of economic activities, as well as indigenous control of the economy. It resonated the predominant nationalistic economic discourse of Papua New Guinea in the 1970s and was further endorsed in the late 1972 by the Somare government's 8-point improvement plan. This plan didn't include international trade. Okay, so these 8 aims were subsequently incorporated into the 5 national goals and directive principles of the Constitution of the Independent State of Papua New Guinea in 1975. The aims could be quoted in support of any proposal, according to Lynn's 1981. However, the opportunities they provided for regional and international trade remains debatable, since issues such as localization, equitable and regionally balanced development, and priority to rural development were deemed able to run in parallel to opportunities that were available in international trade. Simply, our fathers were concentrating all their efforts in their fight for self-government and eventual political independence from Australia, that international trade undertakings were put on the back burner, as it would seem. So Michael Faber from the Overseas Development Group, University of East Anglia, was contracted by the IBRD to prepare a report on development strategy for PNG over the next 5 years during that period. So this was what the PNG environment was like leading up into 1975. Okay. So I have this out there to see why our fathers opted for the universalism approach. So 16 September 1975 arrived and friends to all, enemy to none came into being. Now, when this was eventually achieved on Independence Day, PNG then made its first infant step into the highly charged well of international relations and diplomacy. As a means of its intentions, it decided to opt for the universal approach to friends to all, enemy to none, while the rest of the countries around it in the same region were already discussing regional trade initiatives and prosperity for their people. The move in this direction was done purposely to flexibly introduce the newly independent state to the rest of the world without the prejudices of the Cold War era and its geopolitical military alliances and configurations. This was according to former Ambassador Max Rye in 2003. It was perceived that at the time, such an approach would distance us from the prejudice of our colonial power, Australia, who was firmly entrenched in a military alliance with the US and other Western European countries against the former Soviet Union and its allies. So open regionalism, including international trade in the true sense of the word, was still an unknown terminology in Papua New Guinea then at 1975. However, this being so, the Cold War rivalry and situation provided PNG the ample opportunity to advance this foreign policy by formalizing diplomatic relations with a record 60 countries, 60. So formal links were also established with numerous international organizations where it felt its national interest would be best served. This is from Rye 2003. Now, Prime Minister Michael Somare then appeared before the United Nations General Assembly on 10th October 1975 to deliver his first ever address to the UN, soon after PNG was admitted to the UN as its 142nd member. He also became the first foreign leader to meet Mr. Hua Guofeng. Hua Guofeng is a successor of Chairman Mao Zedong in October 1976 and consequently formalized relations with the People's Republic of China through the signing of the joint communique on 12 October 1976, thereby committing PNG to the One China policy. Now, during this period, Papua New Guinea's first foreign minister, Sir Albert Maurikiki, also made extensive tours to the capital cities of numerous countries and the headquarters of international organizations, accompanied by the first foreign secretary, the late Sir Anthony Siago, to formalize relations with these countries and organizations. Now, what the fathers were expounding throughout the world then was in actual fact open regionalism in a sense of the universalism mantra. It was as if they were plotting and setting the scene before PNG could venture into the maze of international trade. So when we look at making friends throughout the world bilaterally and multilaterally, history tells us that by 1980, Prime Minister Chen's selective and active engagement would be PNG's new foreign policy, taking over from this very liberal outlook. So we have to ask ourselves, did we achieve much between 1975 and 1980? Did we have an adequately trained, selected side to take on all these friendships and win? Or was it just to safeguard the newborn as it attempted to walk? I'll stop there with that question, and we can open the floor now to questions. Thank you, Mr. Aguirre.
Thank you, Mr. Ako, for sharing with us your insight and your analysis of the situation. Prior to independence, pre-independence, post-independence. We now open the floor for questions and comments. We'll start off with Valerie. Valerie will be our first. Participant to ask a question. Is Valerie in the meeting room? We can move on to the next person. The next on the list, we have Amy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yagiora. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Ako, for the presentation. I'm Amy from the Department of Communication Arts. I have 3 questions and a comment regarding last Tuesday's meeting. I'll start off with the questions first. I'll let you answer the question first before moving on to the next. Number 1 question. In what ways do practitioners influence foreign policy decisions? And this is directed to Mr. Ako.
By ignorance, they can influence foreign policy decisions. No, they give you specific instructions to go and tell an economy that this is the national interest and this is what the government will want, and you might arrive late for a meeting, or you won't say it according to how it was intended. Then it influences foreign policy decisions in a negative way. In a positive way, your relations, the relationship you have established throughout your life as a practitioner, whether you know these people you'll be meeting with, that's important. That can influence foreign policy. And your CV, noting very well that before any meeting, the CVs of the heads of delegations are exchanged. That's a courtesy which you must give him. So it's very important for the other side to know that know the capability and the status of the coming delegation leader. O sa may mo Mausman o Salim kam nating o he also so if a delegation a leader is received by the host, he already seen it, and you might be surprised to find out that both of them would have served in the same areas, so that can break the ice when they are talking. If both of them had served in Canberra during the same year, then they'll start talking about sports or something. That will break the ice, and it makes up the outcomes of the meeting more favorable. I mean, look at how the practitioners influence our hosting of APEC in the lead up to 2013. People hardly attended meetings. They'll go in numbers, but the only person they'll see between 2011, 10, 11, and 12 would be either Mr. Ako or Mr. John Maigu or another Mr. Jack Carrico or some running in between meetings. Because this logo, the delegation pulim line Nagoya all go around the town. That's how practitioners influence the foreign policy in a negative way. So when the economists heard that we were going to host APEC protocol, how come? Hold on. Almost like a meeting. So how do they expect to host their own meetings? Will they be there to attend it themselves or? So you see that practice, and to make matters worse, you had sarcastic comments from APEC colleagues who come and say good morning to you after the previous night's reception and talk, hey, you had a huge delegation at the reception last night. Where's everyone at the meeting? You look him. So it is best to, but that was then. That was nearly 20 years ago. 20 years on, we have AI, we have Facebook, we have Zoom meetings like this. So it's easy to influence this. For instance, and also if you have a very strong team behind you, they will support you. But I can one very good example would be me standing in for the agriculture ministers meeting at the agriculture. Standing in for the agriculture minister at an agriculture ministers meeting in Chile. So my team had organized for me talking points, which was just finalized 2 hours confirmed 2 hours before the meeting started. But as I was as I put the screen on and I started listening to the flow of the meeting, and as I was ready to speak, the screen came alight from Papua New Guinea. One of my team leaders said, "Right, Mr. Ako, wait, was them add this in. This just came on in the papers." So I had to add that in, and it was received very, very well. PNG's pushing on the particular topic on agriculture then. Why? Because when you are talking, the other economists who are smart are also Googling what you're talking about. Oh yeah, that's right. It's in the papers. These people are just. So it goes back to your team. If you have a highly trained, capable team, all support me also. Imagine if I didn't have the team backup. Let me just talk. I talked about something as of that was as of 2 hours ago. And in these last 2 hours, I don't know. Now, what if during question time or asking me, Mr. Could you explain in the last 2 hours, we just had news that so and so? You'll be lost. Which is the reason why the game planning and planning as a team is very important. So if there are 10 of you and only one is authorized by the government to go and work on 9 or support team member and carry mouse people go to the international meeting. You must support him for team PNG. So that's how practitioners influence foreign policy.
Thank you, Mr. Ako.
According to my understanding.
Thank you. I'll move on to my second question. My second question can be answered by Mr. Yagiora, and it reads, how do academics contribute to the shaping of foreign policy?
Good, thank you, Emil. As I mentioned in the comment section, if you have questions for me, you can ask during the consultation period. It's the best time for us to meet and talk. But I can answer your question now. It's a general question. So to be specific, in PNG, it's different compared to other countries. As we have mentioned last week, in Australia and in New Zealand, they have a more robust system which is more structured and organized. So the academics play a really pivotal role in influencing foreign policy, Australian foreign policy or New Zealand foreign policy. But for PNG, it's not really, we don't really influence what happens at the national level or governmental level or at the policy level. Mainly it's practitioners, those who are in political office or the bureaucrats. But for PNG's case, I think it's the political leaders who have a more dominant influence on a country's foreign policy. So if you compare the different leaders over time, you see from our history since 1975, we had Somare, and then after Somare, Julius Chen, Pius Winty, Peter O'Neill led Connect PNG. That was put forward by O'Neill and Pato. And now we have Marape and Tachinko. So the political leaders have been influencing how the country's game plan, going back to Mr. Ako's example or his favorite analogy. The game plan has been influenced largely by political leaders, and academics have not really featured in our foreign policy making since independence. We had Professor Ted Wolfers in the early years. He was the one who wrote the 1981 or 1980 active and selective engagement policy. And there's a lot of, during his time, if you go back to the library, to the NOSA collection, and if you read the PNG Times, I think PNG Times will see, say Yambake Okuk was the one who was vocal against Wolfers, a foreign academic from Australia influencing our foreign policy during that period. So, yeah, from history, you can see only Dr. or Professor Ted Wolfers was the only academic, but he was Australian. Apart from him, there was no other Papua New Guinean or indigenous person who played a part in influencing our foreign policy or wrote about it, helped the government to uh, engage with countries bilaterally, multilaterally, and if you look at the literature, there's no one so far. So academics will play a lesser role in influencing how foreign policy is made in PNG, but that is quite different to other countries, Australia, New Zealand, America, China, and Japan, if you look at what's happening over there. All right, so that's my answer to your question. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Yagiora. So on to my last question. So what could be some of the limitations of academic influence on policy making?
I believe that it's for me, yeah. Like I said last week, funding is one issue. Like at Divine Word University or NRI, UPNG, there's no funding for foreign policy research that will help with evidence-based policy making. And if you compare that with Australia, Australia has the Pacific Research Program. It's funded by Australian DFAT, and it's managed by different institutions. You have Lowy. It's made up of a conglomerate. Lowy, ANU, Griffith University. And based on the funding, they've created the Pacific Security Center, Department of Pacific Affairs, the Pacific program in Lowy, and also Griffiths, they have a Asia Pacific Institute. So all these institutes, they get funding from Australian DFAT to conduct research in order to influence policy making, evidence-based policy making. So if you look at that model in Australia, and if you compare it with PNG, I mean, it's not good comparing a developed country with a developing country, but so just to make a point, funding is the main point is funding. So if people got funding, then we can conduct research. That's not only for foreign policy, but journalism as well. If you look at journalism, there's not a lot of researchers doing research on the type of journalism that we are practicing in this country and the different practices that are happening in the country. So there's no one theorizing how journalism is practiced in the country, similar to foreign policy as well. So it's a big challenge. Funding is one. And then, like I said last week, mentoring, the mentorship system where you have a senior academic at professor or PhD level who's mentoring the new incoming academics or scholars by helping them with the research supervision, guiding them through publication and all that. So mentoring, funding, and then I think it's just awareness. And that's why we have this topic for discussion, practitioners versus academics. So we get this awareness across. You people are a new generation of journalists and policymakers will go out there. So it will help you to see that, okay, academia is important. Evidence-based research is important because it will contribute to policy making. So we need to put more money into academia, and that's how we will generate new knowledge that will help us find solutions to our problem. And also, when we give that importance to academia, then it will help us to make really good decisions that are evidence-based. We have facts, we have figures, we've done our cost and benefit analysis, and we're not making decisions based on, oh, morning you get up now. You woke up on the wrong side of bed and you went and that's how you made the foreign policy to go and invade Indonesia or something like that. But it's based on real rational calculation and all that. So that's important, the awareness. We need more awareness in order to help us understand that practitioners, the world of the practitioner is important, but also the world of the academic is important, or academia is important. So when we find a balance, then it will help us to really help solve the problems that are affecting us today. Yeah. Sorry, I think I said a lot, so I'll stop here.
Thank you, Mr. for the insightful answers. To finish off, I'll make a comment. So questions arise from my interest in linking theory and practice in foreign policy formulation. As a trainee journalist, I am particularly curious about how insights from both academic research and practitioner experience are integrated or at times overlooked in real-world decision-making. In the context of Papua New Guinea, where strategic partnerships and regional diplomacy are increasingly vital. I believe understanding these dynamics can shed light on the strengths and limitations of our current policy processes. Thank you. That's all I have.
I'm also more, thank you for that, Amy. I'm also more inclined to, not because we are engaging like this, but I'd rather have the practitioner and the academia in the same team, but having the academia lead in terms of topics. Because in the last 5 years, I've come to appreciate the importance of having an academic, 2, 3, or 4 academics in behind me. When you are sitting in a conference and you are sitting representing Papua New Guinea in front, you only have your arsenal of experience in your brain. All that research material, the academics at the back should have them. So if you have 3, like in 2014 during the whole China year, we Ambassador Pomaliu had Dr. Billy Manoka, Dr. Ruth Turia, Dr. Lohi Matainaho, all sitting behind him. And that was really, or legal sa sing na a peaceful, easy feeling. Because so when I'm economy talk lo forestry, bosok lo okay, I'll just invite Dr. Turia up to explain. So, it was like that. You lo text him online lo most men today, please you blog lo forestry person na ask him more this question how about you answer him? So you see, it's going in well prepared, which is the reason why before you go for any meeting, ask him the agenda person, even the place too. Ask him the agenda person. No, uncle, line talk lo mo go okay, by me go story learn or something. No, daddy talk by me come story no sorry me no got time. But suppose daddy talk him like kind about talk lo ampla house cry or online like build him house lo ampla antap lo waran you elder too so you game approval. And by me come but lo just lo come the story nothing sorry. Because plenty work lo him the 2 p.m. lo Saturday, either research or read or something also. So yeah, agenda setting is very good. Anyway, we're digressing.
We'll go back to Valerie. Valerie, please. Thank you, Amy, for your very insightful questions. So let's listen to Valerie. Sorry, I did not see you online and I moved on to Amy. So
Thank you, Mr. That's all right. Can you all hear me? Okay, good morning to you all. So I just have 3 questions from last week's presentations. Not 3 questions, but 3 comments. I'll leave my questions for them. For the last week's presentations, because I feel that they've expired already. So I'll make comments on today's I'll ask questions on today's presentation. So I'll start with my comments from last week's, both last week's presentations. So my first comment is I see that academics and practitioners complement each other. Academics focus on logic, deep analysis, and new ideas. Practitioners care more about real-world details and understanding important people in the system. So in my opinion, I believe sometimes we as students regain interest in a subject or unit if sometimes someone of experience comes to share with us. That's comment 1. Comment 2 is I can relate with the example of internship being a middle ground between theory and practice, because during my own internship with NBC, I had clearly observed the implementation of what we had been taught theoretically through lectures, and then had firsthand experience with practitioners of the trade developing and enhancing skills through engaging with them. And comment is, in my opinion, APEC is one of the best platforms for Papua New Guinea to strengthen its economy and international relationships, because it encourages cooperation without strict rules. So PNG can benefit from trade opportunities opportunities and investments while building trust with bigger economies in the region. So this kind of economic statecraft suits PNG's needs well, helping the country grow without getting overwhelmed by complex agreements. So moving on to my comment for today's presentation, Papua New Guinea's adaptation of a non-aligned foreign policy at independence can be seen as a pragmatic and economically sensible decision. Given the country's underdeveloped economy and heavy reliance on external aid, particularly from Australia. So by choosing non-alignment and embracing the principles of universalism, PNG positioned itself to maximize economic opportunities without becoming entangled in Cold War rivalries or aligning potential donors and investors. So while some critics argue that this policy may have been shaped more by Australian advisors than by genuine national deliberation, it is important to recognize that PNG's leaders had to navigate real economic vulnerabilities. So in that sense, even if the policy was influenced externally, it's still aligned with the country's core economic interest at the time, securing foreign aid, attracting investment, and maintaining flexibility in international relations. So that ends my comments. Thank you. And I have two questions. So my first one, Mr. Ako can answer, and then after answering, I can move on to my second one. So my first one is, can PNG's foreign policy at independence be seen as economically pragmatic or politically idealistic? Thank you.
Repeating question again, please. Sorry, I didn't.
All good. So the question is, can PNG's foreign policy at independence be seen as economically pragmatic or politically idealistic?
I think both. Because economically, it had to be realistic in the sense that our level of economic development was up to a certain stage. And in the coming lectures, we will talk about, we will also delve into our economy back then, how it shaped it shaped our foreign policy. Note very well that, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, after the war, all colonial line come back. They went back to the old plantations. Sampla all set him up. Sampla Nogat. Sampla all returning soldiers go back and take over. Note very well that the war, I also refer to World War II as PNG's first ever biggest capacity building exercise. World War II. So it was, and they were politically realistic too. That firstly, you mix him independence past them, or whatever. Bien, you mix him independence. You may look out him house now. We can go about thinking about how the people will feel. When the Japanese invaded in 1942, not everyone in the villages went to become carriers or went to join the Papuan Infantry Battalion to fight. Sampla stepped back, and most of them would be all third-born, fourth-born Mangi. So time all gone, war finished. It would be 2 to 3 years. Lilik Brata look out him house, look out him garden, look out him or something. So he had the, not misguided, but he had the thinking that he look out him, so own him now, boss now. So some veterans went back, and they found out that their birthright had been taken up by the younger brothers. You know, garden blown were overgrown by weeds, while on Natla garden solo young brata look out him and walk. Some went back and returned smoothly into the status quo of the village politics and economy. plenty no got. And you know what happened? All of them came back to Mosby. All those carriers who decided not to go home came back, and they were all accommodated. What is now Calgary, Sabama, those are all third, fourth, fifth generation veterans, descendable veterans from the war. They didn't just come there. No, time the war all come, all stop ogata, or tumuna will come na stop ogata. So that was the economy back then. So your question of a pragmatic economy, yes, we have been realistic. And with the politics side of it, when you look at the makeup of all those fathers, all the time most of the houseman, okay, but they were all very traditional people. Remember, you might when you look at 1970, pre-1975, always think about how the village, how your village was like. Ask your parents, ask your grandparents, how was the village like in 1975? There were taboos in place. No lady was, I mean, the Motuans, no lady would walk past me. Unless, suppose winnie blow all same, the lady must walk behind me because they walk past me, smell blame, but covering me. And we believe that them, because Mary and Aisha, they have their monthly cycles now, and it's not good for our preparations to go on hunting trips or fishing trips. So if there's a lady walking this way, no, auntie, please come go backside, and they know, the ladies know. So those are all the taboos. And all those leaders, all those fathers in there were all initiated people. Look him. So they went about knowing their rights as leaders. And for the economy side of things, or losing the line of place lo okay, more goal straighten us out to become independent. So that was a situation back then, where we were all just becoming independent, and we had to be friends to all enemy to none. It was a good idea because we didn't know how the place. How can we choose sides when our economy was one-sided? All the fathers then knew what they wanted to, but they said, let's get this independence first, and then we'll go out and see who our friends are. So within, when Foreign Minister Mauri Kiki and later say Ebia, and then Foreign Secretary, the late Siagu went out, they went out becoming members, signing bilateral agreements, multilateral organizations, all that, but they were also scaling them too. So by 1980, 1981, they realized that, okay, we can know the degree of our friendship with this country, or maybe this like we hold them at arm's length. This like we'll embrace them. And that's where that selective engagement comes in. Because funding we have always been, most parts of our budget have always been funded by development assistance from Australia. That is a given. So based on that, like what Ted Dero did when he established a defense force, he came up with what they call force multipliers. So his force multipliers was to have bilateral defense cooperation with other countries. So remember, Salim all soldiers them go, and they'll learn everything, they'll come back, and then with that survey, all the development to multiply the effect of a development. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Akko. That was a very in-depth response. My last question is, what role did external advisors, especially from Australia, play in shaping PNG's economic priorities within its foreign policy framework?
Most of our, if I remember correctly, listening to my seniors 20 years ago, most of them went on, most of them chosen to be part of the Prime Minister's department or government departments, went on attachments at Australian missions abroad. So that was how the foreign policy influence was provided by our development partners then. They went to missions, Australian missions abroad to attach there to know all those things. Now, in another instance, you look at the teachers who came up, the government teachers who came up. If you Google ASOPA, ASOPA, they made up the teachers who came to Sogeri and all the others in the 1950s, all the other areas in the 1950s, were all trained at Sydney. Were all trained at Sydney by I don't know what ASOPA stands for, but have asked Mr. Google to assist you. But all those teachers were trained down there before they all came up on their postings to Sogeri and all the other institutions here in Papua New Guinea. That was not, and that was not only them. Also, you also had the military teachers who came up when the PAR reformed in 1951. They had teachers coming up to provide technical training to our mechanics, our cooks, our signalers, and more teachers come up. So that was how our engagement, maybe we can say that was how our foreign policy was structured. You see, when you look at the makeup of the PNGDF, it is structured according to how the Australian Defence Force wanted it to be structured. Note very well that from the 1950s and 1960s, you had the Korean War in 1950, then you had the Malaysian-Indonesia confrontasi around that area, then you had the Vietnam War. So these were the wars that were happening in our immediate background. That's the reason why when you look at the development of this country, economic development of this country, the defense force was favored. The Australian government sort of put more resources into the defense force because so looking more member actors and buffer antap in the event outline lo border la cross or kind of sema. So those are the type of things that we have to look at. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Mr.
Valerie, sola. Okay, thank you, Drew. We'll move on to Mr. Jonathan Siba. Is Jonathan in the meeting room, or we move on to the next person? All right, let's listen to Jemima.
Thank you, Mr. Yagira and Mr. Ako. So my question and comments for last week, I'll save it for consultation time. I'll just ask two questions in regards to today's presentation. So my first question is, how did PNG's Friends to All Enemies to None policy shape its international image during the early years of independence? This is directed to Mr. Ako.
Yeah. Well, it did shape it by making enabling the other countries which our fathers went to meet, making them more receptive to us as a newly independent country, to become friends. Now that's how bilateral agreements, bilateral arrangements were confirmed and signed because of the foreign policy, friends to all, enemy to none. If we had a selective engagement by 1975, then we wouldn't have gone to those 68 countries who signed those. We would have to be selective. But then we didn't have the capability yet to be selective. We didn't know who our friends are, which is why I think that universalism was appropriate at that time.
Thank you. My second question is, do you think that a non-aligned foreign policy is still relevant for PNG today?
I am not really convinced. I'm not really convinced that friends to all, enemy to none, universalism or non-aligned is to be should be our game plan. Why? Because in 1975, we only knew of the Bougainville copper mine. We didn't know about the others. But now we have mines. Maybe I can say we have tons of mines. We have oil and we have gas. So Bilum pull up. We don't need to go be friends to enemy to none. Let the others come to us because of you need a plenty of Bilum. We have to approach things that way. Now when I go, you see, with this like Bilum, you carry him go to negotiation table and you go sit down there. You know, please, no, you talk. You'll be the one telling them, okay, tell us what do you want, and then you lay down what the new foreign policy white paper will tell us to do. Being friends to enemy to none, it's a bit like when you it's a bit like you was maybe I use the example of being a writer or being an author. Right now, I get to choose which projects to do. Some I refuse outright. No, I'm not going to do it. Some I say yes, or some I transfer them to some mates. If it's if it requires a lower degree of research, I refer these people to others to see. Because you already have an arsenal of books, and that's how it is. And for our case, we have an arsenal of resources. And not only natural resources, our human resource is also been improving at 10 times, 100 times miles per hour. Look at yourself. All of you know about how to use AI and all, and we all are included now with the rest of the world, your peers in the world. So my own personal thoughts is friends to all, enemies to none. That's fine. But like I wrote up there, at a degree of friendship, sampla ba you may hagi mo? Sampla ba you stop long and a wave lol? Sampla ba you shake hand lol? Sampla ba you inviting mo kamlo veranda blue? Sampla ba you inviting mo kamlo kitchen blue lo kay. That's but all of them are my friends. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, we have 2 minutes remaining, so I believe we have another class after this period. So we'll stop here, and those who are yet to ask questions or make comments, we'll move yours to Friday during our 2 hours session. So I would like to thank Mr. Ako for his time and for making himself available to talk to us and also take our questions and share his answer and his perspective with us. I hope you took note of what he shared with you and you add that to your existing body of knowledge about our foreign policy and the system of government we have, and especially our foreign policy at independence. So we'll stop here. We'll move our discussions to Friday, and we'll also go into our Q&A topic, that is the involvement of the private sector in foreign policy making. All right. So thank you all for attending, and you all have a wonderful day today, and we'll see you again on Friday. And like I said, if you have questions for me, come during my consultation period so we can converse more. So have a good day.
Before you all go, Mr. Igor, please keep on sending the questions on that. What's the thing called Moodle or whatever?
Moodle, yeah, Moodle discussion forum.
Salim Camino, it allows me to practice, practice some AI culture too.
Yeah.
Salim will come. Yeah, that's better.
Yes, it will help Mr. Ako to develop his skills in Moodle.
Yeah, because me and my peer group, I think I'm one of the most advanced ones among them. So after this, I always go and tell them that, hey, do you know anything about the Moodle or things or to Nogat? Well, I'm ahead of you guys, so please keep on sending them to me.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Okay.